Two turkeys from opposite sides of the tracks must put aside their differences and team up to travel back in time to change the course of history and get turkeys off the Thanksgiving menu for good. And that's the plot of Freebirds, starring Owen Wilson and Woody Harrelson. I think this would make a great selection for the next 4 commentary tracks we do.
I agree.
I just think it's interesting because it's like there's no Thanksgiving movies, and this is like the one. Like, are there any other Thanksgiving movies?
Planes,
You got planes,
Trains,
trains, yeah.
We did that last
Even
year.
that's not like, oh yeah, I mean it's like kind of Thanksgiving themed, but it's more like a character piece. This is like explicitly about Thanksgiving. Freebirds.
Well, that's the thing you see in a lot of movies is they don't explicitly feature the holiday. I mean, a movie like Halloween could really take place any night of the year. It doesn't necessarily need to be Halloween.
So Halloween like incorporates the holiday because it's like a scary movie. It's a scary thing happening on a scary holiday.
Perhaps.
It's subtextually in there,
But not Freebirds.
You don't get a lot of Thanksgiving themed movies like that. I mean, when I think Thanksgiving, I think Freebirds, and I think honestly the original Spider-Man.
There you go. By the way, we just passed Dean Cundy's name, the director of Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
Yep.
Classic. This is the first direct-to-video Disney film, I believe. Like live-action one, at least.
Yeah, Dean Cundy is, I think, a pretty overlooked cinematographer. He's probably DP'd at least one of your favorite movies. But his work is pretty excellent all around. He's a frequent collaborator with John Carpenter.
I see Tommy Wallace was an editor on this too, and if I'm not mistaken, Tommy Wallace directed the It 1990s miniseries.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, let me double check.
Okay.
That, but yeah, that was Tommy Wallace.
Okay, well, he directed Halloween 3.
There you go.
Oh, interesting.
Speaking of which, yeah, we're doing 1978's Halloween, I guess. This isn't Freebirds. That'll be next.
That'll be the next 4 ones that we do.
So yeah, the original Halloween. This is often talked about opening scene, of course. It's very unique with how it's shot. Obviously, shot to be looking like at least all one take. You know, you really don't know if who this is. Obviously, we now know this is Michael Myers' age. But as a child, I guess you could have certain hints of it being a kid because of the height of the camera off the ground. But it's, I think, really well seen. It's very tense. There was the shot where they weren't yet sure what the mask was going to be for the adult Michael. So he had the Don Post clown mask, which he does wear in this scene. I love the fact that they were like, is it going to be this creepy cliche clown mask or fucking William Shatner's face? And I think they made the right choice.
Before we dive in, let's just take a minute to explain each of our individual relationships with this film.
All right. I've seen this one and many a times, and then parts 4 and 5 a lot on AMC back in the day, and then the 2018 one, and then that's it.
So how big of a fan would you consider yourself?
Medium range. I've seen more than probably most people have seen of your average American, but less than like a diehard fan.
As for me, this is probably my favorite horror movie. I've seen this movie many, many times. It's probably one of my first R-rated movies. And I've seen every single one of the following movies except the second Rob Zombie film. So I'm a big fan of the franchise all around. Primarily this one. This is the one that I love the most, but I think I'm more fascinated by the other sequels. And I do love them to varying degrees, like a couple of them anyway, or at least bits and pieces of it. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
So you would say you're a pretty big fan then?
Yeah, all around, yeah.
Then I guess that comes to me, where I have seen this movie twice. And the only other one I've seen is the new 2018 Halloween by David Gordon Green with Jamie Lee Curtis. So I am not a big fan of this series. That's not to say I don't like this movie. I do like it, but I'm approaching it from much more of an outsider perspective. So you have a medium fan, you have a big fan, and you have the guy who spent the beginning of this commentary talking about Freebirds. So hopefully this will give you a few different perspectives on the film we're about to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so again, going back to what I was saying, this was supposed to be his mask throughout the whole movie, I guess. And I think they made the right choice going with the Shatner. What do you two think?
Well, yeah, obviously. Well, this movie was made for what, $300,000
Yeah.
at the time, so they pretty much had no money. And I think even the wardrobe to this movie, like the teenage girls, I think they wore their own clothes for this movie. And I think Jamie Lee Curtis spent like $100 at J.C. Penney or something just to buy her own clothes for it. And I think sorry, but I think it got bumped up to $325,000 because they had to pay Donald Pleasence $25,000. Just he was on set for 5 days.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The majority of the budget went to, I read, Donald Pleasence, and then half the budget went for the camera.
Because Donald Pleasence was the big name in this movie, because Jamie Lee Curtis obviously was not as famous as she ended up becoming. What? I'm trying to think. Some other Donald Pleasence movies. Anyone here ever see THX 1138?
No, I haven't yet.
Donald Pleasence to me is the standout performance in that movie.
He's great in The Great Escape.
Yes, I forgot he was in that. Great movie.
Yeah, he's a class act. He's always pretty loyal to this franchise, for better or for worse. He was always, even like when in the sequels when they got worse, he was always the standout in them. He's just one of those actors who's just so naturally gifted. He doesn't have to try that hard. He just sounds talented.
And because we've talked about this, and like I said, I haven't seen the other sequels, but would you say he always gave it his all and took it seriously, regardless of how schlocky the material might have gotten?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
he
that's
just showed up for the paycheck.
I mean, not just that. I'm sure he did too, but he did try. He's not half-assing it, and if he did, he does a very good job of pretending that he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I always think too. Part 4, I believe, and Jake, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's part 4 where he's dragging this screaming girl through the school. Yeah, like, Michael, little girl, and it's like he's got to be like 60 something, carrying this little girl around a thing, like really giving out. He's not like phoning it in at all. Like it's a little over the top, but I always think like, oh, this is the deranged psychiatrist, and that's what we see in these movies as we go on, that Loomis is becoming more and more unhinged every few years when Michael Myers returns, and he's like, who's that Greek goddess is the one who a Cassandra who who knows what's going to happen but no one fucking believes. So it's like 5 sheriffs later, it's like, listen, I know every previous Halloween my entire police force and half the town's been murdered, but I don't think I'm going to believe you this year. It's like you can see he's going insane, and he's doing a great job playing it. When you get to the last one he's in, who's a better actor, him or Paul Rudd? It's clearly him.
Yeah, well, it's actually the 5th movie that he does what you're describing, and he's just taking the direction of the director, and that movie is kind of baffling, to a point of almost fascinating. Yeah, I mean it's fine.
Is that the one was that his last one?
No, that was the 6th one.
Oh, okay.
That was the Weinstein one. So
see, I'm trying to approach this from an outsider perspective to the franchise, not the guy who doesn't know what happens in the series. So I'm doing my best. I actually have a larger. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I have a larger thing about the pieties that form around this particular franchise, but also just like low budget slasher franchises in general, like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. Hopefully that'll be the insight I provide, and not just, oh, I didn't know it was in that movie.
No, that's an appreciative perspective, because I think that's something worth exploring, actually, because it's a little difficult for me to be as objective, because I'm a big fan of slasher movies, for better or for worse. I just think they're fun, so I'm looking forward to hearing that perspective. But this movie, in a nutshell, you look at slasher films historically, but this isn't really a slasher movie. I don't think it's certainly a horror film, but to me it's almost like a thriller too, and everything like that. I think there's more interesting things going beneath the surface. So this is very much a John Carpenter film. We tend to take the film for granted and everything, but if you kind of look at it for what it is, it's really just doing its own thing. Yeah, pretty much that.
You know what always stuck out to me about it, both times I've watched it, is how raw the movie is,
Yeah,
and not raw like gory and like violent, but just like how straightforward, simple the whole thing is. And
yeah,
there's a real simplicity to the film that kind of makes it scarier, just how straightforward the whole thing is. That's sort of the magic of it.
yeah. It's very stripped, and it's very much. I mean, that's very much John Carpenter's directing style too. Um,
You think of like just how simple like the concept is, and the kills are, and the crimes that Michael Myers commits. I mean, the end of this movie is just, and we'll talk about it more when we get there, but it's just chasing her around in a house, Jamie Lee
yeah.
Curtis. It's very
Hmm.
simple. I like the 2018 Halloween, but if I had anything that stuck out to me as sort of something I didn't care for as much in that film, it would be some of the more heightened elements that they added into it. I think of like the opening of that movie where they're in the prison and all the prisoners are freaking out when they're trying to talk to Michael like he's some satanic force. And like, yes, the point is that Michael Myers is pure evil, but it wasn't like this operatic thing. Though it was, the simplicity of it was sort of what made it scary.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's the
I think
thing.
that's the legacy of the series seeping into the narrative a little bit in that case.
well, when you keep, and that becomes a fundamental problem of the sequels because I think you, the more you expand on Michael, the more you dilute him. He's more terrifying when he's scary. It's the simplicity of it that I think that's so scary about it. The idea is he's just absolute evil, and he's encased within just this man, and he just stalks these babysitters, and that's really it. You don't know why, he just does because he's evil, and that's really it. It's almost Lovecrafty, and it goes back to that simple horror that Carpenter that you've seen as other movies too, like The Fog, The Thing. Um, what else? I mean, The Mouth of Madness. He loves that really simple horror, and here I think he's using a lot of those ideas, and it's sort of encapsulated in this really low budget, simplistic story of this maniac. All this evil is just put in this man. I think that's part of what makes it so terrifying.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's when you really, like you said, Jake. You're the more you go into Michael, the more he's diluted. So, okay, in part one, he's just some guy who randomly killed his sister, broke out, and then really the only reason why he's following Jamie Lee Curtis is in this scene right here where she goes up to the door and he's hiding. So it's just like had she not stopped by to drop the keys off, or she had already had to drop them off before he got there, none of this would have happened. You would have had a completely different movie of him going around killing other people. He's a force of nature. You see that with the 2018 movie where he's just killing people who he comes across, and really it's only because the crazy doctor physically brings him to Jamie Lee Curtis that he goes on the killing rampage to get to her. You just feel he's a force of nature that just Jamie Lee Curtis is now in his way. Had she not been there, again, it would have
Yeah,
been, he would have continued killing other people around Haddonfield that night. But then you get to the original part two. Okay, John Carpenter has to explain why she's there. It's his sister. Okay, fine. He's trying to kill his sister. Cool. How
yeah,
do we know that? But whatever. Then that bleeds over into 4 and 5 and a little into 6 where he keeps trying to kill the family members off. And then, now it's part of a cult where he's a tool and it's just weird and it's not nearly as scary.
right. The more you bring him back, the more you have to create an explanation as to why he's coming back, and it kind of leaves you no choice but to expand. But to expand is a contradiction of who Michael Myers fundamentally is. That's why it gets worse as it goes along, especially by the sixth one.
Is that
But
why there's so many like pieties behind what a Halloween movie quote unquote should be?
Probably, I
uh,
think.
yeah,
Because it's like, what I noticed, and I noticed this with a lot of slasher franchises, but this is like the proverbial example. there's like a pattern to when these films come out. You get a new installment, and whether it's Halloween or anything else, and barring a few exceptions that are received well, it comes out. It's kind of a cheap cash in. It's not well received, but the fan base turns against it because it inherently contradicts what the fan base or what the audience sees as the thematic underpinning of the original films. And on one hand, I certainly understand that, but on the other hand, it's also very limiting creatively, where it's like, well, does that mean if you have a more interesting idea or direction to go in with the franchise that contradicts what the previous film was about, can you not take it just because of the inherent piety that exists within this franchise? Now, again, I haven't seen it, but what got me thinking about this was actually the Rob Zombie Halloween, which I guess that's like gets into like Michael Myers' backstory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in theory, that based on what we said, that contradicts the idea of Michael Myers in this film.
Yeah,
but that also, to me, and like I haven't seen the movie, maybe the movie doesn't work on its own, but to me, I don't have a problem with doing that in like a new version of Halloween, a remake, because it's doing its own thing. It's not trying to be this movie again. It's kind of trying to tell a new version of that story. But I see a lot of people slam that film for inherently trying to give Michael Myers a backstory. I think that's okay if it's done well in its own right, in like a vacuum.
It's not. Yeah, that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is the movie's just terrible. It's just. I think I don't like Rob Zombie that much as a director. I get what he was trying to do, but I think he just does it the wrong way. It's just. I mean, if you know Rob Zombie, his movies are pretty crass and very blatant and very. They're kind of dumb, and that's okay to a certain extent, but I don't think it really. It just doesn't gel well with Halloween. It just
doesn't work on its own, is what you're saying.
No, yeah, it's badly executed.
Because it's I think you can do that, and I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan myself, and like I said, I haven't even seen it. The movie might not work on its own. It sounds like it doesn't. But no. I think conceptually, what I see criticized most about that is that it takes such a different approach to Michael Myers. But I mean, if you're doing a remake of Halloween, I almost think you should do that, because otherwise you're just going to make a watered down version of this film, or I guess a really crass version if it's Rob Zombie. Try and do something different, and that's what I talk about when I say like the pieties of these franchises, where it becomes sort of creatively stifling to even try and make another installment because you're so bogged down by what it's supposed to be versus what it can be.
Yeah, well, the other problem is just the sequels were just terribly executed with their ideas. I mean, it's just... Oh, they were really... Even like Halloween 6, which revolves around like a cult, and Michael's like he's the center of this evil cult, and there's like magic rocks and everything, and it's just...
That sounds like a raw slasher film to me. Magical cults and stuff like that.
Well, it's weird because they trying to have callbacks too. So like that Dr. Loomis was talking to at the very beginning, like they bring him back and he's the big bad guy, and it's like, yeah, remember him from 30 seconds in the first movie, and then like Tommy Doyle's brought back, played by like Paul Rudd, and it's like they're trying to have reverence for like the original one, but have zero idea like what to do with it. And Jacob, your point of the piety of it, people getting ticked off. I think of, I'm not a huge expert of the Friday the 13th movies, but the ones people point to negatively a lot are, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there's one of them where Jason's not even there. He's a copycat killer. Like, it's just someone who also is wearing like a hockey mask. People don't like that because it's not really Jason. And then the final Friday, Jason is an entity, like a spirit that just was possessing his body. So like the FBI blows the shit out of Jason, and then like he's a slug that goes from body to body, and it's just like a weird thing where it's like they were trying something new. It's like there's only so much you could do with the idea of a killer in a hockey mask or a killer in a Shatner mask, and they try and do something different. And that's the ultimate different plot they did was when they did Halloween 3, which had nothing to do with the first two movies. And fans, ripped it to shreds. You know, as much as I'm okay with Halloween 4, I would have liked the idea of like John Carpenter and these talented filmmakers trying to do something different every year. Like, you know, that's like, okay, we had our first two movies with Michael Myers, and then, yeah, it didn't help that they fucking picked the weirdest fucking plot on the planet for Halloween 3 of, again, magic stones and
Halloween 6
turning kids into snake monsters and all that. That maybe they should have tried something a little bit more normal, but yeah, it's people get like really addicted to these franchises, and it's like you look at it, like you said, the body count in this isn't really great. It's, you know, not too bloody. Like those sequels, you know, are what people dislike about the franchises, but also what people identify the most with some of these franchises. It's like, you know, especially the Friday the 13th ones and Nightmare on Elm Street ones, the true characters of Freddy and Jason don't really get formed until the sequels. It's like, you know, Freddy isn't nearly as much of a wisecracking asshole in the first one. Jason, you know, doesn't even appear in the first one, doesn't have his hockey mask till part 3. So it's just like a weird thing where it's the piety for the originals, but the originals are the most different sometimes out of what the sequels are. Like, for as weird as the fucking sequels for Friday the 13th got, they were all in similar tits, gore, you know, high body counts, really gruesome kills. Same with Freddy, same with Halloween. And it's like, it's very odd, the reverence for the original, but it's the most different from the remainder.
Yeah.
It's the, you know, green, sticking out like the green thumb.
Well, yeah, I mean, all those stuff, all that stuff you're talking about, like going back to the Friday the 13th and this and everything. The problem with all those things that they were just executed terribly. I think that might be why fans hated it too. But I think it also because, you know, I think a lot of times fans just don't like things that are different. I think they are threatened by that. They like comfortables. They like the safe and comfortable. If it deters too far, it makes them uncomfortable, and they lash out on it. We've seen it happen many times, even when it's done well.
Well, you know what it is? I think a lot of, like, at the risk of sounding condescending to these fans, I don't mean it that way, but a lot of them don't invest as deeply in sort of the craft of filmmaking as like film people do. And so they go and they see a film, like a bad Halloween sequel, and it doesn't work for a variety of reasons, but because they don't invest in it the same way that we do, in the craft and the writing, then they kind of just look for those sort of tangible surface elements to blame it on. So if they see something like Halloween 3, which I haven't seen, although I think that's the one that sounds interesting to me. That's the different one.
It's the best sequel. It's not because it's necessarily different in a separate story, but because it's the most well executed of all the sequels, and it just happens to take a very different and interesting direction. That's like a great bonus.
Yeah, and I think part of it, is just because, you know, they like the comfort of the familiar. But on the other hand, I think if the movie doesn't work, you know, a general audience is more likely to point towards surface elements rather than deep dive into like writing issues or structural issues or something like that. And so they'll say, well, this one doesn't have Michael Myers, I don't like it as much, or it felt too different, something sort of vague in general like that. And I think that's why that can happen.
I think so too.
Now, actually talking about the making of Halloween itself, I love upcoming here when they go around the hedge. If you pay attention, you can just see smoke billowing in from off camera because of John Carpenter was like chain smoking while directing. And it's one of my favorite movie facts ever.
It's like right here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I think when Jimmy Lee Curtis comes and they're talking. But yeah, this is like just like a very well executed. There you go, you saw it go across.
I've heard of that, yeah.
But it's like, you know, this is all very well executed. And it shows, you know, it's unfortunate with like the other sequels. It's like this is such a simple, you know, it's, you know, going back to what I was like saying when we were interviewing Eduardo Sanchez for like the Blair Witch Project was, you know, there's not a lot of overt scares in this. It just is a very unsettling movie. And, you know, Carpenter and all of them did a great job at having, like, Michael Myers, like, looming on the edge of the, like, screen a lot, on the edge of the frame. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's overt. You know, you physically see him. But, like, there are scenes, like, upcoming when they're driving past the hardware store, if you pay attention, like in the upper corner, you can see like his car driving by, like he's still stalking them. It's just a very well done thing where it's like if you're not really paying attention, you're not going to notice it. But it's like just very well done in making you always feel like you need to be looking for him constantly.
Again, like that last scene we just saw, that's what I mean when it's like it's very raw. It's just open daylight, people walking down the street, just a shot of like Michael Myers there by the bush. It's very straightforward, very simple, but that's what makes it so engaging.
Well, in an interview, John Carpenter talked about he just got the style, this very restrained style from just movies that he watched growing up, and he talked about one movie he watched in college, I think called Innocence, and he described this wide shot of like a ghost on like a lake just way far in the distance, and he said just the fact that it was so far back and you couldn't really see much of its features is what made it so eerie. So that was something he remembered.
It's like a surreal element to it.
Yeah.
You know, you're conditioned to think of these slasher villains as constantly being hidden in shadow and creepy lighting and obscure weird camera angles, but here it's just very straightforward, and that kind of almost makes it more eerie.
Yes. Again, it almost a lot of this stuff is almost incidental to the kind of, well, maybe I shouldn't say incidental, but just of the reaction afterwards. I mean, this is all they're doing is just executing a story to the best of their ability. It's just John Carpenter making a film, and it just happens to become this huge thing.
I think the fact that it became a huge thing is also part of the reason why we can analyze this film the way we are now and be like, oh, yes, it's so raw, because in comparison to what it became, not just what this series became, but what the whole genre became, yes, it's very like straightforward and raw. Even like, this is like weird, but like most of this movie is taking place during like daytime now, at least up to this point.
Yep.
Yeah, the first like 2/3 of the movie is daytime, with the exception of flashbacks. But I mean, it's just like a very well executed, and like, you know, it's a testament to what they were able to do on like such a small budget that, you know, and like originally this wasn't even supposed to be centered around Halloween. It was supposed to be like multiple nights where like each night someone was being killed like one by one, and they realized we can't afford to do that many, like, you know, day night, you know, multiple costume changes, multiple this, that, and the other thing. So like, okay, let's change it to largely a day and a night, and then they're like, okay, well, what night should we set on? Should it just be a random night? How about Halloween? And, you know, it like it was incidental originally, but I mean, it works perfectly. You know, that's it. You know, it's perfect because it's like, what's the one time of year if you see someone wearing a mask walking around town that you won't be immediately suspicious of them? And, I mean, besides now with the pandemic, we all have to wear masks, but generally before that, it was Halloween, so it's perfect that she's a little unnerved by this guy, but like she wouldn't, you know, you don't blame her for not calling the cops. It's just like, oh, it's just some asshole wearing a mask because it's Halloween. Like, this is normal.
You know, what's funny is the same thought process went into the making of the movie Freebirds, where they were making this film about turkeys traveling through time to stop turkeys from being eaten on Thanksgiving. And they were like, well, when do we set this film? And they went through all the holidays. Then they realized if they set it on Thanksgiving, that it fit perfectly with the theme of the film.
Oh my God.
Stay tuned for our Freebirds commentaries parts 1 through 4, though.
Mustafa Kad's a genius. Well, he was the producer of this movie. He
was the producer of all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
All the Freebirds?
Yes. Well, he's the one who had the idea originally. This was not a John Carpenter original idea. Yeah. He just had the idea of a movie being about babysitters being stalked and killed, and that was really it. And then he went to John Carpenter, and Carpenter just said he'd do it because he didn't have a job at the time, but he wanted creative control and his name at the top of the title, and he agreed to all those things.
I've heard that thing about the babysitter killer idea.
Yeah,
I'd watch that movie if he just made a straight up movie about babysitters getting killed. I'd watch that if John Carpenter did it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it still would be good.
That'd make a great episode of the Babysitters Club.
That's the finale.
Yeah, this was just a period when Carpenter was just on fire. He was just making great movie after great movie.
Because he set himself on fire with the cigarettes?
Wait, did he?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, okay. I mean, I kind of believe that because he's a chain smoker.
What see, he's like someone that'd be very interesting to like talk with. Isn't he? Who was it? Was it you, Jake, or Andrew that was telling me that he's a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog?
That could
That
have
was
been
not
me.
me.
That was probably me.
Was he the one? Because he gave some interview. He's like, "Oh yeah, I love Sonic. I even love the one where he turns into a werewolf." And I'm like, that's the obscure game to reference.
Yeah, I've heard too. He's a pretty nice guy to talk to and everything.
Or just like interesting because he's like a big genre, big swing sort of filmmaker. And
Yeah.
not all of his films have worked, but I feel they're at least interesting to talk about for the most part.
Oh, absolutely. Here the late '70s till either the early '90s, late '80s. He was just on fire.
Now his primary job is to pick up the phone when filmmakers ask to remake his movies.
Yeah, I really respect his view on it. I'm just doing it for the money. I can respect that, honestly.
I mean, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Let's not beat around the bush, fellas. We would totally do that if we were in the same position.
Absolutely. Plus, these movies. I know they remade a lot of his movies in the 2000s, but those came and went. And these will always stick around, really. So what's he got to lose except, not getting a nice paycheck?
And see, it makes those movies look even better because, it's like, hey, he gets a shit ton of money for, like, hey, you can keep remaking Halloween, go ahead. And then when those movies come out, it's like, wow, that movie really sucks. It was a great movie, the first Halloween he made. So it's a win-win for him. It makes him look like a better filmmaker, and he makes money for doing nothing.
And he did the music for the new one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his return to the franchise.
Yeah, him and his son. Yeah, it's just great. He writes, he directs, and he can do the music too. He's actually a very talented musician. He has like his own group now, I think, with his son or something.
We'll
He
have
still
to
puts
see
out
them
music.
perform once venues open up again in 6 years.
Yeah,
Was
this
she,
is the scene, by the way. Oh.
Oh, go ahead. Well, the actor there who plays Annie, she's like a recurring Carpenter character. She's in The Fog, and she's also in Halloween 3.
Oh, yeah. But this is the scene I was talking about. You'll see, like, Michael Myers' car pass by in the background in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it was this one.
You can't see it in the widescreen version. I mean, you can see it in the widescreen version, but not the full screen.
Yeah, so watch the widescreen.
Yeah, so
Also,
here you
how
go. Well,
this is great. It looks like Illinois, right? Not Pasadena.
Yeah.
All those palm trees.
See,
Honestly, I never.
like I said, I haven't
No, yeah.
watched this movie a bunch of times, so it always just looked like the Midwest to me.
Yeah, no, it's no, there he is over his shoulder. No, joking aside, like they did a good job. It's only now after moving out to LA that I'm starting to notice, like, oh, those aren't your typical like Midwest looking houses, and I love and it was a detail they didn't necessarily need to do, but I love the fact that they had to go to a craft store, buy a bunch of fake leaves, or or a fake tree or whatever, rip off the leaves, and then paint them different fall colors, and just keep scattering them around, like on the streets and on lawns, and then as soon as he yelled cut, okay, shit, guys, we gotta go collect those. Don't let the wind blow them away. And it's a nice little touch. Yeah, you can occasionally see palm trees in the background, but it still works. They make it feel Midwestern. I know the sequels, they actually did film some of them in the Midwest, but this works.
Yeah. No, look. It's one of those details you only notice if you watch this movie a million times. I think they do a great job of concealing that.
Yeah, you're watching it and you're just like, oh, they're going down the local Midwestern Sepulveda Boulevard.
Now, something I've noticed here that I'm not sure if what it was. You can see there's a lot of smudges on the glass here of Annie's car. And I was reading that this movie was shot out of order to the point that John Carpenter had to create a fearometer or something like that to tell J.B. Lee Curtis okay, where you're at. So I wonder if that shot was filmed after Annie's death scene because she's hitting at the windshield. So I wonder if those smudges were from that take when they were doing that, and they didn't bother to clean the glass off. So that's something I've just noticed.
They just didn't have time.
Yeah, they didn't get the Windex out. But yeah, we're 40 minutes in before we get to Halloween Eve.
Yeah, at night. Well, actually, going back to the cinematography, I read somewhere that Carpenter and Dean Cundey actually watched Chinatown as the inspiration for the cinematography. The real kind of blown out orange daytime colors with the blues and at night and everything, which I can actually kind of see it.
Yeah. Well, and my joking with it clearly being Pasadena, if you look carefully, I mean, this now really for the rest of the movie feels like you're in a small deserted Midwest like street, and it's great that like you have a little bit of trickling down that you see a bunch of kids on the street. Yeah, you're thinking this is probably like, I don't know like if they say it, but like this is like 7:30 on Halloween Eve, and as we go later and later through the movie, you start seeing less and less people, and to the point that you don't even see the neighbor who she pounds on the door at the end, like that asshole neighbor who hears her screaming for help and just shuts his light off. Like you, at a certain point, you just don't see anyone else except for the main characters and then Loomis and the sheriff, and like it makes you feel so much more isolated, even though presumably the vast majority of these houses have people on them. That's just like, hey, it's now late, people are inside, Halloween's over for this small Midwestern town. Does a good job at that.
Sheriff.
Yes. I also love this house is now like a massage parlor in Pasadena. I only know that because James Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, did like a location like hunt when he came out to Hollywood for like to scout his own movie, and he's like, they actually moved this house. It's not in the same location anymore, and it's been turned into a massage parlor, and it's like really nicely fixed up. It's like bright, lively colors are painted on it. It's like, little do you know, this is a famous horror movie house. It's like something like 100 plus years old, I think.
It's fun, It's like just the obscure locations that end up in these iconic movies. I always think about what's that cafe in the original Spider-Man? Is it like the Moon Cafe?
Yeah.
I passed by that while I was like in middle school driving through New York, and I remember it's just some local restaurant that just is on that street there. It's it was in this huge movie, and it's just a local restaurant.
That's the thing, when you live in a major city, you just start recognizing these locations. It's like, it's just a local cafe. Like the down the street from where we live is like Corky's Diner Roll closed down last year, but it's like I can't tell you how many movies I've now recognized that from, like going there like 3 times.
I think my favorite, I moved to LA and this movie series or film or whatever got messed up for me. Example for me personally was Cloverfield, because I followed the Cloverfield stuff back in the day. Like I was obsessed with the viral marketing campaign for the original Cloverfield film. We're like, oh, what's the movie? And like Cloverfield ended up being like the working title, and then it was the real title, and I was like, what could it mean? Is it like a code name for something? Is that like the name of the monster? And Cloverfield's just the name of the exit that they get off of to get to Bad Robot.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's in Santa Monica.
I've never heard of that. That's great. Well, my location that got ruined for me is Back to the Future 2, when they go through that tunnel at the end where Biff and then like Marty gets saved, and then Biff crashes in the manure truck because remember when he did that in the first one. Realizing that tunnel is only like a tenth of the length of like what they portrayed in the movie, and I guess rewatching that movie now that tunnel's like 5 miles long, it seems like, with the amount of time they spend in it, with Biff driving 55 miles an hour, but it's cool.
Speaking of very long tunnels, I'm getting totally sidetracked here. What was the bridge from Bad Boys 2?
I don't know.
Was that supposed to be like the bridge to get to like the Outer Banks in South Carolina? Or is that supposed to be like because I was on a bridge when I went to the Outer Banks, there was like a bridge that was really long like that, and I'm like, oh, so maybe Bad Boys 2 wasn't complete nonsense. Bridges like this can exist, because I remember when we watched that, I was like, oh my god, is this just like the world's longest bridge? Everybody's going like 100 miles an hour, and this scene is like 20 minutes long. They just never reached the end of that bridge during that car chase.
Hey, listen, if Hillbilly, California could have a 15-mile long tunnel, the Outer Banks could have that.
Well, I assume, does Bad Boys take place in Miami?
I feel like it does.
The first one does. I forget about the second one.
Because that bridge was longer than the city of Miami, but
Back to Halloween.
Oh yeah, Halloween.
Yeah, the scene shows like how nice Lori is. That she's like they do like a good repartee between her and this Tommy Doyle kid. Like you get the real feeling that she's been babysitting him for a couple years now, and that she does actually care for him. With Annie, I don't know if it was a deliberate thing or not. I get the thing that she likes Annie nearly as much that she tolerates it. Maybe it's just a job for Annie, but I think it maybe speaks volumes to Jamie Lee Curtis's acting and the characterization of Lori, that you really feel like she's like the nicest person that has the worst fucking luck that will ever happen to her. And it's just then when you see the 2018 one, it's really a shame. Like you see like the PTSD and what this night will eventually have done to her.
Well, this is actually I want to talk about that, but before I do, this is sort of like where the final girl trope originated from, right? It was this film.
Yeah, and Carpenter and Deborah Hill have said they never intended to make the whole thing of virgins survive, don't have sex. Like their thing was, well, I mean, yes, strictly speaking, she's the only one who's not with a boyfriend or thinking about sex or trying to be distracted by anything else. So she's the only one who's like alert enough to like notice weird shit versus the two people later on, PJ Souls and Bob, are like, actively banging. She's getting ready to try and go on a date. That it was completely inadvertent, but it did at least set that trope of.
Well, yeah. Look, the reason they have sex before they die is they needed a reason for them to get them alone and unaware before Michael kills them. That's really it. It's not like part of some trope or anything. That just became a thing afterwards. The tear is just a means to an end. It's very practical.
That's what's kind of interesting about it, is that it became a trope, but here it's just sort of a practical storytelling element.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's how a lot of those things start. It just starts as someone emulating something until it goes from copy to just like a genre unto its own.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Friday the 13th is just a blatant, shameless ripoff of this movie.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of gets into that.
Has anyone here seen Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah, I have.
I just watched it recently.
Oh my god!
Just last week I just watched it.
What did you think?
It was great. I loved it. It was ridiculous.
So intentionally hilarious at times. Just the extras. Some of them were like 40, and others were like 15 as the camp counselors. It was hilarious. Just
what's funny is to me is that like the acting was all over the map. Not in terms of just like how good the actors were, but like what kind of performances they were giving. Like some of them were playing just like very naturalistic. Had very naturalistic acting. And others were just like completely over the top cartoon characters. There's like no one was reining them in, and so some people were just totally cartoonish, some people were acting naturalistic, and it's a very funny juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, back to Halloween. No, but you're right though with how like the trope gets stolen and like it keeps getting spun. So, like it, in this one it had a very practical purpose of, we need the teens isolated, we need them distracted. So, okay, what do teens do? Okay, they have sex. There you go. Or they're wanting to go on a date. They're thinking about their boyfriend and all that. And you look at it, I mean, there is nudity in this movie, obviously, with Michael's sister at the beginning, which is a little obscure because it's dark in the room and the whole, like, gimmick of you're seeing through the mask. And then, obviously, PJ Souls, but it's like, it doesn't feel nearly as gratuitous as you see with these later Friday the 13th movies where they're just like, we just gotta put nudity in there, might as well have the characters having sex in like every single scene.
Well, Carpenter always talks about the power of suggestion, and I think that really started in this movie, because in Assault on Precinct 13, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a lot actually more violent than his later movies. I would say it's less suggestive and more blatant, to the point where you actually see like a little girl get killed on camera. It's pretty surprising, at least for a John Carpenter film, if you've seen his other movies. So after that, So even after that, he said he thought that was a little too rough. So I think with this, he hit his stride in terms of his his more restrained, simplistic directing. Where I
This is random. Has anyone here actually seen the original The Thing from Another World? Because we
I
just
have
saw it
not.
come up on the TV.
No, I'd like to.
I would too. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was Sci-Fi Boys. Maybe that was the name of the documentary. But I saw a documentary where Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and some other filmmakers were talking about a bunch of those old '50s sci-fi movies, and that was one of them. They were breaking down some of the scenes in it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a Howard Hawks movie too, and I think that was when his career was kind of on the downslope, which is ironic too because I know Carpenter's a Howard Hawks fan. Assault on Precinct 13 is pretty much like Rio Bravo. It's essentially a western.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Um,
It's a Last Stand like Face Off sort of thing. El Dorado too, same movie. Howard Hawks remade the same movie like twice. But
I
it's
was gonna
pretty
say, I think
interesting.
El Dorado I saw. I don't know if I saw Real Bravo.
Yeah, it's like the same movie, and they're both great. But I mean,
It's
but
like
it's kind of fascinating.
it's kind of like how Woody Allen remade Crimes and Misdemeanors as what was it called? The one with
Match
Scarlett
Point.
Johansson. Match Point, yeah, which is
Yeah.
a loose remake of Crimes and Misdemeanors.
Hmm.
Well, that's the thing. It's interesting to see filmmakers kind of going back and seeing like, okay, what can I do to improve this? And I was watching this thing because it being Halloween, I've been watching a lot of the classic Universal monster movies, and James Whale did Invisible Man, Frankenstein, and The Mummy, and like all three of those movies are pretty similar in plot. Of when you look at it, I mean, half the cast are like the same across them, but like you see like the idea of like, okay, mad scientist, you have the girlfriend of the scientist trying to talk him down. Like you see how like the movies kind of like evolve and like, okay, he's a little too dicky in this one. Let me try and make him more sympathetic. Okay, no, let me back that off. And it's interesting that the idea for filmmakers to be like not like pull a Lucas and go back and re-edit their movies, but like let me loosely remake this again. That was just a side note. I thought.
Yeah, no, I think it's a an interesting point, and I actually would say I think part of it is just a lot of these filmmakers have certain ideas and themes that they're interested in, obsess over a little bit, and it comes up a lot in their films.
Yeah.
So when you see something like Crimes and Misdemeanors, Match Point sort of thing, or like we were talking about with Howard Hawks, it's just the stuff that interests these filmmakers, and they make more than one film about it.
Well, yeah, that's just part of the fingerprint of the director. Like going back to the Carpenter, there's like a common theme in a lot of, I think from this point till starting from Assault on Precinct 13 to maybe The Thing, and some of his other movies too. Actually, I would say where it's like this unstoppable force, this unrelentless force that's just unkillable, that is just coming for you no matter what, and you really can't do anything about it. That's an Assault on Precinct 13. That's in this movie with Michael Myers. That's in The Thing. The Fog, where it's these ghosts in the fog coming for you. Even in The Mouth of Madness, at a certain point, it's again. I said it before, but it's almost Lovecraftian. This absolute evil that's after you.
In The Mouth of Madness, I would say that is very directly Lovecraftian.
Yes, absolutely. Here it's a little more implicit, but I would say Michael Myers is almost like a Lovecraftian character, or at least the idea behind him is.
It's like a very stripped down sort of Lovecraftian character, and that he's just
Yes.
a guy, but he's
Yeah.
got that pure evil in him, and that's all there is to him.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's very interesting because it goes again to Donald Pleasence acting when he gives that speech of like I tried to reach him for X years and then I spent the next X years trying to keep him locked up forever. Like it is very like he's almost describing like a supernatural creature. And I mean when we get to the sequels of these movies with the literal magic in part 6, but even like when you see like the punishment he survives where it's like okay there's no way he could be a guy, but it's like he's describing almost like him as a supernatural being where it's like, and it's a very interesting touch here. Any injury you see him get in the movie in the climax between the needle in the neck and the hanger like to the eye, like these are all like, and then like even when she stabs him like in the stomach, or it's like these are all technically survivable injuries that like he doesn't necessarily, he's just an evil man. Like there's not a supernatural element, so like it works in two different levels of, you can imagine, is he supernatural yet, or is he just like pure evil, and that's what he means.
It's so weird to me that like the sequels go into magic, because I can't even imagine like Michael Myers as a character from like the 2 films I've seen. I can't even see him like getting involved in magic stuff, because I feel like he would like not care or understand any of it.
He's like a pawn, to be fair.
Like if you try doing some like magic ritual involving magic stones or something around Michael Myers, he would get bored and then just go and try and kill someone. It's kind of like giving Tom Bombadil the One Ring and he would just drop it in the forest. That's just what I think of when I hear like these complicated plot mechanics with, you know, with Michael Myers. But then again, it's like, you know, you also, what else are you going to do with these movies? And you don't want to stifle the creativity and just get lost in the inherent quote unquote rules of these films. And, you know,
I don't know. It's a problem, because the other problem is that they just slapped these together, the later sequels and everything. People just didn't care as much. I mean, sometimes you got the sense that you had like a young, like I was reading up on some of the behind the scenes of like the latter sequels for Halloween. It sounded like you had like a young writer, a young director who actually kind of wanted to say something about it. So I think there's always like a good intention behind it. It's just, I don't know.
Well, and a lot of it was studio interference was screwy. So Part 4, which I think is just a good sequel. I mean, forget the whole fact that, you know, they shot out his eyes and he was incinerated, so it was Donald Pleasence. Okay, the fire was put out, whatever, I'll buy that. But, you know, it ends with him seemingly killed again, and then, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis's, Laurie's daughter, supposedly has inherited the killer gene, and you're led to believe she murdered her stepmother, or adoptive mother. And, you know, like, that was where they were going to be going on. Like, they potentially thought, okay, we'll make her as the killer. And then the studio's like, no, you got to bring Michael Myers back. So, Part 5, like, okay, he's back. He floated down river, and there's, like, a man in black and, like, a thorn symbol that like, plays into Part 6 that they were, like, just like, you gotta put something up, put a mystery element in it. Like, the writer of that didn't know what either the thorn symbol that was tattooed on Michael's wrist and then showed up throughout the movie, or the man in black was. It was just one of those things where it's like, all right, well, that'll be explained in the next one, I guess. And then it gets to Part 6, and someone's like, gotta explain, like, okay, this guy who, because it's like, when you watch Part 5, it's almost like magic is being used to, like, break him out of jail. Like, the only, like, real-world thing, like, watching that scene where he's, like, broken out of jail, and you see the aftermath is, like, if they use fucking thermite or something to blow open the jail door, and it's, like, just now Part 6, like, okay, you know, we gotta explain this now, and then, I mean, Part 6, like, that would be an interesting commentary to do. Maybe we'll do that sometime.
Oh, it's the worst one.
Yeah.
It's the worst one.
It's got the most fascinating history.
That one can wait.
Yeah, I don't blame that. That's when I'm not in a rush to watch again. It's just kind of like even like with 5, I think is just terrible. It's the second worst one, but with that one, at least it's kind of fascinating, because you're just, some of the directorial choices, you're like, what the fuck was the director thinking, to the point where it's fascinating. But with the 6th one, it's so like joyless and just wrong-headed in every way. It's just awful. There's no joy. Like, even a Halloween Resurrection, I enjoy Halloween. It's terrible, but it's like one of those so bad it's good movies. And Busta Rhymes, I think, gives a pretty good performance. I think he's actually taking it very seriously, and I genuinely believe him in that situation.
Is trying to become a fan of like the Halloween series, or like any slasher series like this, like joining a group of drama-filled friends, where you try and become a fan of it, but then there's like all these different like rules and all this gossip with all the different installments, and you kind of don't like a bunch of them, and it's like you like them but you don't like them. It's like a drama-filled clique is what it feels like, these franchises.
Yeah, I can agree with it. But yeah, this is what I was referring again. You see her like, kicking shit and all that, so I wonder if those were the streaks were coming from.
You just didn't clean it up.
Well, actually, we should mention who's playing Michael Myers. It's Nick Castle. It's a school friend of John Carpenter's. And I think Nick Castle said he wanted to get in directing and see firsthand what it was about. And John Carpenter just said, well, why don't you just play the guy in the mask so you can be there every day on set to see what we do? And that was kind of the solution. Plus, I guess he had like a unique walk, and he was tall enough where he had enough of a presence for it. But he went on to to direct himself. He directed The Last Starfighter. He co-wrote Escape from New York with John Carpenter.
I'm actually looking him up right now because he directed a few things, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
He also did the original treatment for Hook.
He did.
Oh yeah, I just scrolled past that.
Yeah.
Hook.
Yeah, he's still like listed as the writer, but I read a thing where like his script was pretty much thrown out. Like all they kept was the concept of adult Peter Pan has to rescue his children, but it was a contractual thing where they left him on as like a writer, like to film it out with him.
Oh, that's right. He did Dennis the Menace.
Oh jeez, yeah.
With Walter Matthau. I saw that several times.
Michael Myers murder. He directed Dennis the Menace. Oh my god.
That's so weird.
When it's weird because it's like, you know, even though this is really the only acting thing he's ever done, it's like he does a good job like as Michael Myers. And it's like we'll get to it in a few minutes when he the infamous killing Bob and like knife to the pinning him to the wall, and he does like the head tilt like John Carpenter's like that was all Nick Castle. It's like that's a like a very like well acted performance from some guy who's like like you said, he just wanted to be on set to see how directing worked, and he could have just been done straightforward like, okay, I'm walking around, I'm killing the girl and all that, but he does a very nice performance in it.
Well, yeah, and that.
Oh, sorry, just real quick. Was he?
Oh, sure.
Michael Myers in the new one?
One brief scene. I think
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's from what I understand, the only scene he plays Michael Myers is the scene when Jamie Lee Curtis like looks in the window and shoots at him, and it's revealed that was his reflection, so she missed the shot. I think it was just that one.
Is it kind of like in The Force Awakens when Peter Mayhew would play Chewbacca whenever he was sitting down, and then they would have the new guy come in for the action?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Well, that's I will give the new one credit for actually getting the characteristic of Michael down with how he moves and breathes and everything. I think that's really important that the other sequels missed out on, except maybe the second one. But after that, it was just like, obviously, it was always a stunt guy in a suit, but I don't think they really. It just never quite worked as well. I don't think because they really understood it as much of what it meant.
The thing where there's not the consistency with actors as well. And, like with Kane Hodder as Jason, like he's Jason for like 5 of them. He came
4.
On, like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like, he knew how to play Jason. It's like, I could very easily have just been like, okay, let's get a different stunt guy. And I think the big problem is, one, like the masks, like they could never get the masks to look right again after this. Like, so it's like the masks always look different. And two, like they're not paying attention to the type of guy they're getting to be in this costume. So it's like part 4, he looks like a fucking football player. It's like, where it's like here, he's like very tall, but like, you can tell he's like a little muscular, but like he's like, pretty skinny guy. And it's like, I don't know, like to me, it's like seeing the big football player Michael with the tight mask looks ridiculous versus he's wearing loose fitting clothes because he just stole them, and like he seems a little unassuming. Like he could definitely kick my ass, and I'm sure Nick Castle at age 70 probably could still kick my ass, but that's what's more frightening is like you don't know, like you kind of see him, it's like I could probably take that guy as he then beats the ever loving shit out of you and stabs you to death.
And all of this is funny because whoever played Michael was just the stuntman they probably had that day who was available, who got the gig. They're like, okay, this is Michael. You got the job.
It's not like this stuff was planned like bit by bit. It's just us. My friend's playing Michael Myers.
Yeah, and, it was pretty much that until I think this new movie here.
That's what. Again, I talk about like the pieties that form behind these franchises, where it's like this movie, they're making this movie, and it's just John Carpenter's friend Nick Castle playing the killer, wearing like a William Shatner mask that they bought for 2 cents from like the local dollar store.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's this grand mythology where it's like Michael Myers, the real Michael Myers must move this way and breathe this way. And it's just like none of this was intentional. It's just kind of what people got attached to.
Yeah.
Well, I actually.
Oh no, it's. Yeah, well, I agree with that. You can cut that out, Waz. I was just stumbling there.
Okay, but no, what I was going to say.
Should add in like heart attack sounds there.
No, but
and then just have like the sound of a body hitting the ground, and then cut out Jake's audio for the rest of the track. We'll do it like they did with the Blair Witch, where they listed the actors as missing or dead on IMDb. We're gonna do that, but just say Jake had a stroke.
R.I.P. We'll start a GoFundMe. No, what I was trying to say is, like you said, like all this was kind of like just planned out, like as they were going along. Like, okay, let's pick up a mask, and like I said at the beginning, I was like, it was between the mask we see of the Shatner mask and the Don Post clown mask, which I think what makes this so creepy is it's just blank and like all that. And I saw for the 2018 movie they got the original prop master back, and like. I don't know if they got him back for the movie, but like someone was interviewing him and they bought a vintage Shatner mask and like, show us what you had to do to make this. And like you see, he's like, okay, I'm just roughly cutting the eye holes out. Like he's barely paying attention as he's doing it, as he's talking to them. And then he's like, okay, then we had to spray paint the hair because it was a lighter color. He's like, okay, we got to spray paint it dark. So he's just like getting like a piece of cardboard, holding it over like the mask to make sure he's not getting on the face, and doing it. He's like, oh, then we rip the sideburns off, and then we kind of paint it white, try and make sure it's even. It's like you see he's doing this over the course of 5 minutes, and it's like, this looks better than any manufactured Shatner mask that you could buy at like Spirit Halloween now, and it's just like amazing. It's just like this, just like slapdash. Like, let's do this. Maybe he took a little bit more time in the original, but like it's still like we're taking a mask, just cutting the eye holes, making them a little bit bigger, and spray painting it white. There you go. And now we have an icon of horror. Like a mask they bought for like $1 or something like that is now one of the most iconic, movie villains, monsters, whatever you want to call them, of all time.
And what I get from that, is humor, because we tend to mythify the most simplistic things. This guy, he was probably this underpaid employee. He had no money. He just did this thing because he had to do it, and he did it well. But it wasn't this huge ceremonious thing. He just did what he had to do, and it happened to just create this very iconic thing.
Maybe magic rock rituals with cults are actually a fitting metaphor for the Halloween, like the fans of these sort of movies and stuff like that. Deifying the simple thing that doesn't really care about you that much.
Yes.
It's just, where did you come up with the idea of the iconic Michael Myers mask? We had to be wrapped up before dusk. Got it done so fast.
Pretty much.
I don't know.
Well, that's like, I always think, like, as we're doing, like, these commentaries, one day will this be a multi-billion-dollar franchise, so coming up with a stupid name in 5 minutes, it's like, that's the equivalent of it. We won't. Again, to our 25 subscribers, we really appreciate you. But, yeah, it is just like, the simplicity of it is great, because it's like, it just feels natural. That's like, Michael Myers just happened to grab whatever mask was available to him at the time to like hide who he was. So in the 60s it was a clown mask. In the 70s it was the one, potentially the one mask that they had at the hardware store that he broke into earlier in the movie. That's just like, it's this simple thing that you don't need to assign too much logic to. And you're right, it's been deified of like, okay, and it's like a weird thing, like I think it's in part 4 where it shows him like breaking into another store, and you see like just a row of Michael Myers masks, and like he just like, you gotta get that, it's like it's commodity now, and it's like, it just feels weird. And it's what goes into the original version of this, where it's just he sees Lori and then follows her. That's like, had it been any other mask, it would have been a different thing. Or had there not been a mask there, maybe he wouldn't have done it. Maybe he feels he needs the mask. So if he'd done this and had broken out in January, maybe he wouldn't have been able to kill people because there would have been no mask. It's just he's a force of nature, and just like any one of these variables creates a different movie or no movie at all. I was rambling there. I think I had a stroke.
I'm going to be the last one left talking on this thing.
I also love how PJ Souls had a cameo in the 2018 one. She's the teacher. I don't think she's on screen, but she's giving the like lecture that mirrors Laurie's in the beginning of this. So I like to think that she actually somehow survived, and they just don't bring too much attention to it.
I didn't know John Lennon was in this movie.
Well, I guess I heard Dennis Quaid was originally supposed to play the boyfriend
PJ
there.
Souls?
Yes, PJ Souls.
I actually could see a young Dennis Quaid doing that role. I saw Enemy Mine recently, and I was like, oh, he's really good and young and energetic in this movie.
Well, we always know the horror movie he should always be associated with is Jaws 3.
Oh yeah,
That and Leah Thompson.
that what was it? Was Legion the one where
Oh, yeah.
with Paul Bettany?
Yeah, with the diner with the demons and angels. I watch that movie once a week.
Anyway, the the cinematography is really great.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is really well shot.
Yeah, you can do a lot with little here, but going back, I kind of want to talk about like the sequels and everything. But it's just kind of funny how that started too. With like, because now we deify the whole brother sister thing between Michael and Laurie, but I think that was just created as just like a necessity for John Carpenter because I think he had to justify why Michael would still go after Laurie Strode because it's the thing where it's like, okay, we need to bring Jamie Lee Curtis back because the last movie was a hit. So why is Michael stalking her again? Why is he still, if he just targeted her in the last movie? And then he just contrived this whole brother sister thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's dumb, but at least it's like functional and it's personal, where you can understand a motivation there. I think that's why it stuck around for so long.
Yeah, I mean, other than the 2018 one, they've been brother sister the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, it works better if they're not related because it's a lot scarier if he's just targeting a random girl.
Yeah.
Because if you try to give a little more meaning to it, it dilutes Michael.
Yeah.
But it's fine. But that's a thing though where I think it still does kind of work. At least it's something. It's functional. And then when you go into H2O, they're still related, and then it provides a very good arc and through line for Laurie to face her fears.
I think it just depends on like who's doing the writing and like what motive do they have. So it works in part two and in H2O because it's competent writing, and then like you have Jamie Lee Curtis to act off of. But like when you get into 4, 5, and 6, it's like okay, like why is the family like it's a contrivance in those movies to have him keep coming back. Okay, he's got to kill the family line. It doesn't really make as much sense, and it's just like feels like okay, well that's the reason why because they're related. Versus I know it was contrived for Carpenter, I should say, with part two. Like he just had to pull it out to do something, but like it feels earned at least because they were trying versus just it was an afterthought and like oh yeah, of course he's going on killing spree. It's his family.
I think Carpenter was trying because he said he bought his 6-pack before he wrote the script of the second movie, and you can kind of tell because Jamie Lee Curtis isn't in the movie that much. I wouldn't say she's the main character. She's incapacitated for most of the movie. It's like this other group of characters who are getting killed off one by one.
Yeah.
Halloween 2 is okay. It's fun. I think the star of that movie is Dean Cundy's cinematography. There's some really great visuals and lighting in that. But it's all right.
Well, the weird thing for me with that movie is, it takes place same night. People say it's like the 2 acts of the same movie or whatever that like you watch it as like a double feature, and it's just very weird because it's like okay, it was like what is it, like 5 years, 3-4 years later, so it's like Jamie Lee Curtis has to be like wearing a very bad wig in it. It's like there was no reason to necessarily make it the same night. They could have done, and I think that would have been creepy. Like he's been out, like he escaped that night. We don't know where he is. He's been around for a few years, and then you could still have her be like a star of it because now it's a few years later and blah blah blah, or she's still barely in it. But it feels a little weird that it's like you're now narrowly locked into. We have a handful of hours before dawn that this could be set in.
I don't think that's a bad idea because at least it still stays true to Michael in this movie where instead of springing up and targeting Laurie arbitrarily many years later, here at least it's like the same night because at least it's consistent with the ending of this where he disappears and he's still out there. And then with the second movie, okay, it's the same night. It's still Halloween, so it means he can show up again. So it's conceivable.
Yeah, but H2O worked where there was 20 years in gap, and he was
that works too, and that's why I was okay with them making a new one of these because the idea of Michael springing up after so many years to kill again is actually pretty scary, and you don't know why. I think that's a really good idea.
Well, it's actually interesting to talk about the extended lure of the Blair Witch. I've been watching so much of that between all the freaking interviews I've done. I never want to watch that movie again. But the extended lore of the Halloween movies is this YouTuber who I watch called Dr. Wolfiola did a review about like talking about how in the mid 90s they made a book series about Halloween, and it was like right before H2O came out, like in the weird in between time of Halloween Resurrection or Curse, whichever part 6 is, being, you know, like kind of killing the franchise, and then the revival of it. And the one book was dealing with the fact that it pretends none of the sequels after, you know, part 1 happened, and that it's just been Michael Myers has been living somewhere in the outskirts of Haddonfield, and he just comes back every so often, just kills a few people, and then that's it. He's become like a book, like the literal boogeyman, like urban legend of the town. And I thought that was also a potentially interesting way of doing it. I guess Rob Zombie kind of did that with part 2 of making him Hobo Michael living in the woods for a while, so maybe not.
Well, it almost sounds like the aborted script that Carpenter and Deborah Hill wrote for Halloween 4, where Michael was kind of in it and he wasn't, but it was more around the thematic idea. I guess the setting was Haddonfield canceled Halloween after these murders and everything, so they try to conceal it, but the youth is trying to, you know, they're fascinated with the idea of Michael Myers and everything, and they're trying to bring it back. And and Michael is coming back because of their belief in it. He's coming back as like a ghost, and I guess the theme of it is like if you try to make something taboo and restrict it, it's just going to come back and rear its ugly head.
So wait, Jake, you're telling me that if the government were to try and like shut things down for protection, and then a bunch of asshole youths who are like, I'm probably not going to be affected by this, and still try and do it anyways, that would be bad?
Yes, I'm saying Halloween 4 was ahead of its time. Or the John Carpenter script. But even with Halloween 4, again, it's like The Force Awakens of the franchise. It's pretty much the same movie as this, just set in the 80s.
Yeah,
I would say,
but it has a good ending.
2018 follows that reboot sequel formula that The Force Awakens does. You know what's an aspect of that isn't talked about as much too? The meta narrative of those sort of things. And are we like? I feel like we're in the age of like the meta narrative.
Yes.
And because that's in Halloween 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to keep it on topic, where they have like the teenagers walking down the street going, "Oh, only 3 people got killed. That's nothing." And it's the meta, sort of that meta aspect commenting on itself. It's like a weird trend where it started off kind of neat and novel. I think of like the Lego Movie, and now it's almost coming across like trite in its own right.
I think now it's gotten lazy, and very just a very easy thing to do. I remember, Jake, we talked about this a long time ago, but it has become a trend recently over the past several years, where I feel like the importance, kind of how we view something, how maybe the fans of something, how they view a movie in real life, tend to describe that importance within the narrative and within the characters themselves. You know what I mean? I remember
I felt that way watching the 2018 Halloween, and more important, in like a larger sense, it's making these franchises about themselves and about what they mean in the real world. And I think there's like something very cynical about that if you like really go too far with it, where you end up with like movies that are just about how great they are and how much you should like them.
Yeah, that's what's kind of, well, we're talking about Spider-Verse too, how that kind of did that.
Which is, and I don't know, I'm not going to get too much into this, but Spider-Verse is a great movie that is about how great Spider-Man as a franchise is, basically.
Yeah.
And there's something inherently cynical about that to me, where it's about, it takes the novel idea of anybody can be Spider-Man, which is a very inclusive theme, but it's also a very commercial theme. It's essentially saying anybody can buy Spider-Man toys. And I won't get too much into that, though. That's a whole thing.
Well, yeah, but it is consistent with what we're talking about for the 2018. Like, I remember, Jacob, you made a good point where Laurie, how she's traumatized, how, you know, this movie that we ascribe so much importance to in our lives, within the narrative of this reboot sequel, it's so important to her to the point where she's traumatized, where it affects her character. Now, it might work a little better there because this is a very traumatizing event where I think it would scar you for a long time. But I think it is part of that idea too, where here's this very important thing that we hold very dear in real life, and oh, look how the character views this very important thing within the context of the film. It's kind of like a similar thing.
In the context, yeah, that's like the weird contradiction for me with that is that on one hand, I don't totally buy that her character would be that traumatized after the events of this. Traumatized to some extent, but I don't think she would turn into like a crazy survivalist with like a weapon like
Cash.
yeah, cash inside her house and everything.
Booby trapped in the house.
But on the other hand, it made for an interesting character. I didn't really see it as like an A to B sort of thing. The connection wasn't quite there for me, even if it was like interesting in the film as a vacuum.
For me, with that is, I think like when I was watching, because I felt the same way, and it goes with the meta narrative of like, oh, it's not that scary and all that. It's like, and it was weird. Like you're right, they put that in there just for the sake of it, because that still would be a fucking disturbing case of this kid killed his sister in the 60s, never talked again, broke out of jail once, killed 4 people. Because we always forget about the mechanic on the side of the road. Got to count him in there too. And then, got caught and then never talked again for 4 years. It's like, that would be disturbing to like a small town. So it's like, yeah, weird that they did that. But with Lori, I think you're right to a certain extent that like, yeah, she would be traumatized, but she'd become a gun-toting nut. I partially, and I have no confirmation of this, but part of me feels like that was they might have had a version of the script where part 2 was canon, where he then followed her to the hospital and was the sibling, and they cut that out, but they still kept the gun-toting Lori, because then that's in her mindset of, he's my brother, he's trying to kill me, he tracked me down later that night before being caught, he's gonna break out and kill me again, versus if it's just part 1, this crazy guy tried attacking me and he's been in jail for 40 years. Like, why does she automatically assume he's pure evil?
I mean, we don't know that though.
Yeah. So,
I just the sort of meta narratives of these franchises. I think it just speaks to how like widespread franchise sensibility has become within Hollywood, and just like in a broader sense within what we just consume for entertainment, where we're like cannibalizing so many different franchises, consuming so many different ones that the amount gets narrower and narrower versus original content that we watch. And I don't want this to turn into a rant about we need to watch more original content. I mean, I think anything can be good if executed right, but it's getting to a point where we're just watching franchises that are about themselves. I felt that way with like, I think Star Wars is like the proverbial example of that at this point, but you can definitely see that with Halloween 2018, which I thought was a good movie.
Yeah, well, the point is just stop telling me how important these franchises. Just make a good story. Just do that.
That isn't about the importance of itself, right?
Yeah.
That can, it's just like about that's saying something in its own right.
Actually engage with it for what it is, and create a story based on, and just try to expand it and do the best that you can.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're obviously getting into the climax already. Yeah, and again, it's like Dean Cundy's cinematography is great. Jamie Lee Curtis is selling the hell out of this, being fucking terrified. I kind of believe that John Carpenter was threatening to fucking murder her at this point. But no, it's like great. It's like you see, like the final girl trope, is often overplayed, but it just feels so natural that like this, innocent, sweet babysitter is now like fearing for her life, and it makes sense that she's the last one alive just out of sheer luck that she was the last one to go in that house. That had she went to that house before the other 2 came, they would have been finding her corpse, and it's just like sheer luck, and it's like he's a force of nature coming forward, albeit very slowly, but that makes it more pants-shittingly terrifying as you see him slowly coming towards her.
Yo, this is like a lockdown shot too, right here.
Yeah, see, there's sort of it's suspenseful without having to do too many fancy tricks there. It's like locked down. He's walking towards the camera.
I'd actually like to go to this house. It's only like a half hour from us, but I'd like to go there and actually see like is this shot in real time? Like, with how fast we see him walking, would it really take him that long to get across the yard? I've just always wondered, like, I go back and forth whether he's walking way too slow or way too fast for the pace we see, or is that, like, so well lined up that it actually works? It's just something that's always creeped the shit out of me because I can't really place my finger on it. It, like, goes to the whole, he's going so slow, but he can still catch up on you. It's not like the Mummy movies from the 50s. It's like, he's got his deliberate pace, and it's like, it's still fucking terrifying.
Everybody knows Michael Myers must walk at a certain pace while breathing at a certain rhythm. They're gonna, if Nick Castle ever dies, they're gonna dissect his corpse to figure out the exact physiology and anatomy of Michael Myers so they can digitally recreate him with CGI and make him move exactly like he's supposed to. Like a clumsy stuntman made in a low-budget 1970s movie.
Oh, God. It's like how they're bringing James Dean back for that, like, Vietnam movie that'll never come out now because of COVID. Like, they're gonna like recreate Nick Castle in every way, shape,
Are you
form.
kidding? That movie's more likely to come out now because of COVID, because it stars CGI actors.
Fair point. I also like this movie especially has the trope of people being like, you know, keep stabbing him, keep shooting him, make sure he's fucking dead. But it's like, it goes to show I hate that argument because it's like, at least in this one, like, I could see, like, in the 2018 one, in this one, Laurie is like a 17-year-old babysitter who was freaking out after seeing all three of her best friends fucking dead and then had to stab a guy. That's like, yeah, I think it's not on her top priority to keep stabbing him, check his pulse and all that. Like, it makes it feel more realistic that she is just now frazzled. The adrenaline is starting to come down on her. That she's just like, I think he's dead. Okay, I'm going to just assume he's dead now.
Well, it's more about the suspense, the suspense of just assuming that, because she doesn't. Nobody knows, including Laurie, that he's unkillable. As far as we know, he can die right now. And what's scary is that, the twist is, he's alive. Like, he just keeps coming back, and that's what makes him more terrifying as this movie goes along.
Yeah.
Because at this point, if you're in the theater in 1978, yeah, you think he might be dead too.
Yeah, we're an hour and 22 minutes.
Well, it's not like,
so.
I mean, it's just that it's not like a thing where he can't be killed, though. He's just like, he keeps coming and they keep failing to kill him.
Well, that's the thing with this movie. All the injuries...
I'm totally misunderstanding this.
No, in this movie, I think all the injuries he sustains are potentially, you could get through. So it's like, okay, she jabbed him in the neck, she missed the carotid artery or the jugular. And then when, in the very brief scene when his mask comes off after she stabbed him in the eye with the hanger, you can see it's a cut above his eye. So it's like, she's just not hitting anything important because she's not, like, a very good shot. And it's like, even with, like, the final scene where Loomis shoots him 6 times, and he's gone. It's like, that was the thing. Before the sequel, you could argue, did he just crawl off frame? He's dead in the bushes in the next yard over, or is he truly unkillable? So this one, you could go either way. Is he an unkillable machine, or are they all, like, fucking really terrible shots? Like, did Loomis miss all but, like, one of those shots that caused him to fall over the balcony? Like, it works either way.
I think it's supposed to be he's unkillable. John Carpenter has used that word, and plus the little kid here says you can't kill the boogeyman. That's the point.
Well,
I know there's
it's like kind of a figurative thing, though.
Yeah.
The fact that he disappears at the end is sort of just like the cherry on the cake. It's not supposed to be like, literally, if you threw a bomb at Michael Myers, he wouldn't die. It's just like, you can't, like, kill, like, these inner demons kind of thing, or something like that.
It's more of that. You don't want to take it too literally. It's more of this idea. Michael's evil. He's evil, that's it. He's simply evil. You can't... Yeah. He's the boogeyman.
Evil can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I also like...
It can just be thrown out a window and then put in successively disappointing sequels to dilute it.
Exactly. Well, that's why he's called The Shape. He's not called Michael Myers in the credits. He's called The Shape.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. He was Michael Myers when he was a little kid, but he's The Shape.
Has actor Mike Myers ever commented on this?
Probably. I imagine he's not very happy with it.
But this
just imagining him in his fat bastard voice complaining about this.
Or talking like Shrek.
That
Boy,
Michael Myers.
Carpenter. Why are you
John.
naming your movie villain after me? I know he didn't name him after him, but
it's just a course. But have you guys seen that or listened to that audio? Someone brought like an audio recorder into a theater back in the 70s and was recording their reactions to like this final 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I've listened to that. I don't know if that's real or not, though.
Yeah, I like to think it's real.
my favorite recording I ever found like that was someone recorded the reaction to Anakin getting burned in a theater in 2005. And like everyone's just dead silent except for some chuckling when he finally catches on fire. And like they looked in the comments and they were just like, I think someone quoted Back to the Future because it was when Obi-Wan says, "It's over, Anakin, I have the high ground." And someone just linked to that part of the video and were like, "You may not be into it now, but your kids are gonna love it."
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie.
That'll be a commentary down in the future.
Oh my god, I would totally be down. We would have to like stop it and then rewind to the beginning and just like watch it twice for me to get through all the things I like to talk about in Revenge of the Sith. Because the first half would just be me quoting every line.
Yeah, that's... Anyway, back to Halloween. But yes, I would like to do that commentary at one point too.
Also,
Love
just
Revenge of the Sith. Okay, back on top.
But no, Nick Castle raising up like that again. It's like it's amazing, like the physicality of what he could do with this movie when he did not have any desire to be an actor. He was just doing a favor. Like I can't imagine, like hypothetically, let's say there was a video on Jacob's YouTube channel where I'm dressed up like a genie or something like that. Like that'd be ridiculous. But imagine that were. I can't imagine the amount of effort that would be put in on my part would equal anywhere near to the level of like Nick Castle like doing a favor for his friends. Like this is like crazy. Like this shows you how good of a friend he's a much better friend to John Carpenter than I am to you, Jacob, in this hypothetical scenario. For like the amount of like hard work he plays and like the physicality in it, and then and Nick Castle be damned. Now we have our other actor for the Unmasked Michael for these like 2 seconds.
So that's not Nick Castle?
Yeah, that was a different guy.
Yeah.
Oh. I always liked that it was very unceremonious, the unmasking.
Yeah, and John Carpenter said he wanted to find an actor with an angelic face to contrast with this evil figure.
We keep talking about it like Nick Castle was just doing this out of like the goodness of his heart. He did get paid for this.
But like still.
Yeah.
I'm like saying,
but he is trying.
In our hypothetical situation, unfortunately, Andrew did not get paid for the genie costume thing.
Well, next time, Jacob, when you make a horror movie, Wes can play the murderer. He can strangle your actress the next time.
We're gonna push you over the balcony.
Oh no! I also love with this. I mean, again, Jamie Lee Curtis and then Donald Pleasence. The only time they interact, which is crazy to think. Like, oh yeah, the two leads don't interact until like 2 minutes before the movie ends. And but I love like just the physicality of both of theirs, and like she's really giving it her all. And she's really giving it her all. And then also someone who's forever ruined this scene for me by pointing out that Jamie Lee Curtis was like taking a nap like on a couch before this, so you can see like the creases in the couch from the couch on her face a little bit. And it's just, and it was like a corduroy couch. If you look carefully, you can see like the ridges. It's like perfect.
But this is a great piece of acting from Donald Pleasence here. Yeah. Apparently, this was his idea.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember the exact phrasing, but like it was like he was just supposed to look out to be like surprised, but Pleasence went to Carpenter. It's like, no, I want to have a version where I do like I knew this was going to happen, and it's like that's that much more terrifying.
Yeah, and this editing here was added in post production. They just shot all these exteriors of the locations and just slapped them in there with the music and the breathing.
Yeah, well, and actually the shot of the living room, if I believe, I would have to look back at it, but I'll put it up on screen if I'm wrong, but like you can see the butcher knife on the ground because that was just like a set photo they took before they were moving on, so like it definitely wasn't intended to be like this is where it is after the fact. It was like there's just a set photo. They're like, yeah, use it. So Michael age 23, 6, and The Shape was in there already? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so Tony Moran was the one who was unmasked.
So that's the unmasked Michael.
Yeah.
And he's 23 in this. I didn't know that.
that math doesn't work exactly out, but whatever.
Yeah, well, in the second movie, he says Michael Myers is 21, so I don't know.
Well, there's also
John
not
Carpenter
that many
forgot to
movies.
carry it too.
Yeah.
He probably
was
did. He was
adding it
probably
up.
yeah when he was on his third beer.
But
Deborah, is math right?
fuck it.
It's fine.
Just smoke billowing out. That's why.
Open the window. Can't see my paper. I'm trying to calculate his age.
No, that's why he got fucked up. There was so much smoke he couldn't see which key he was pressing, so he had 22 on his 3.
He was coughing too hard. He accidentally hit the one.
You can't make Michael 231 years old. Oh, it's a typo. I said that evil was immortal.
Oh boy. So, well, we thank you for joining us in with our Halloween commentary of Halloween. October's been a big month for us, so thanks to the new subscribers we've gotten on it. So this is what we do on a normal basis now. And then, yeah, join us in November when we're doing 4 reviews of, what was it called? Freebirds?
Freebirds.
Yeah,
We're doing the
Freebirds.
month of Freebirds.
Freebird, you're wary.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
After years of fruitless warning of his farmyard brethren
Happy Halloween.
of the coming Thanksgiving doom, Reggie the turkey finds himself spared as the annual pardoned turkey. However, Reggie's easy life is disrupted by Jake, a fanatic turkey who drags him along with the insane idea of going back in time to make sure turkeys are not part of the first Thanksgiving. Through foolhardiness and luck, the pair managed to take an experimental time machine to do just that. Now in 1621 at the Plymouth colony, Reggie and Jake find themselves in the middle of a turkey clan's struggle for survival. In doing so, their preconceptions of the world and themselves are challenged forever, in a conflict from which the world will never be the same.